Welcome to I Said What I Said. I'm Brad Wakai. That's Tyson Gentry. Tyson, we're gathering today because what in the world is going on with Kansas and Bill Self? 2 straight losses. We're recording this. This is going to come out before they play Oklahoma State on Saturday. So they can turn things around. They're playing at home. Then they got to go on the road for Colorado. That's the last team that they beat because they are coming off 2 straight losses against Utah and BYU. Not a good performance against Utah, lose by 7, and then they just get destroyed by BYU, 91-57. So Tyson and I are going to take a look, kind of what we think about Kansas, like what's wrong with them. Is it just like this kind of 2-year stretch? Is it over for them in the NIL era? So we're going to take a look at that. Make sure to let us know what you think in the comments. Smash the subscribe button as well. Hit the like button, all that good stuff. Let us know what you think. Is Kansas done, or is this just a little blip on the radar? They'll be fine. But Tyson, this is a kind of a shocking revelation for where we sit in regards to Kansas, because this is the second year in a row that they were the preseason number 1, and it is now the second year in a row that we're sitting back and going, what's going on with the Jayhawks?
Scott, this one's for you, buddy. With the Kansas Jayhawks this season, this is like a general reminder, and I know no college coaches are listening to this, but you got to be awful careful with some of these guys you're pulling out of this transfer portal, because when you get selfish players, you get results like this. And there's, a couple guys you can point to, but Kansas, like, it's Hunter Dickinson first and foremost, but this is like, it's hard to believe this is a national championship team from just a couple years ago. Like with the way that they play now, it's selfish, it's individualistic, it's completely different than kind of what we're used to under Bill Self. And maybe it's just because they were winning games before, and they're 17-9. It's not like the world's falling here, but Kansas is going to be the most popular upset pick come tournament time, because they're going to draw some 12, or something like that, and everyone's going to go, well, Kansas sucks. But as far as like diagnosing it, dude, the rotations are awful, the shooting percentages are bad. I think it all comes down to, like, these dudes don't look like they like each other.
Yeah, I mean, and Bill Self says after they got blitzed by BYU, he's like, we just got to get away from each other right now.
Who had better players to you in the BYU Kansas game?
Oh, we were talking about that. I'm looking, if you took off just cover the logo and you said this is scrimmage, white versus black, and you just kind of rolled it out there, you're like, okay, which team is better? The guys in the white jerseys, guys in the black jerseys, and BYU's in the white jerseys. I'm taking BYU. I'm like, those guys have better players. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there, Tyson, we're talking about this. I'm like, this is Kansas. This is Kansas basketball we're talking about. A blue blood of all blue bloods. Like you said, 2 years ago, they won the national championship. And I think if we're going to kind of talk about the root of the issue, and you're kind of looking at Hunter Dickinson as the problem, and maybe that is the issue right now. But I'm looking at the talent on the floor. Tyson, where are the blue chippers? Like, what's going on? I'm looking at these recruiting classes for Kansas, and I'm trying to pull this up here on 24/7 Sports, just kind of give everybody an idea. And it has not been them recruiting at the top of the line like they have in the past. Like, we don't have the Joel Embiids. We don't have the guys, Quentin Grimes, things like that. Just a few years ago coming in here, Andrew Wiggins, Bryce Thompson, 5-star guy, good player. Didn't change the face of the program. That was in 2020 class. 2021 class, only 1 4-star, no 5-stars. KJ Adams, he's still here. It just never got better, I think, in college. And that's something that we're big on here on this podcast, Tyson. It's like, you have to improve throughout the course of your career. Grady Dick, okay, there's a 5-star guy. He's 21st, one and done, went to the NBA. What happened with that? That was coming off the national championship year. I don't think he did really anything to boost that. The 2023 class, no 5-stars. Elmarco Jackson, Johnny Furphy, 4 stars. Marcus Adams, Jamari McDowell, 4 stars. Then you start going transfer heavy and yada, yada. And that's when you get Hunter Dickinson in here. And then Tyson kind of round things out. The 2024 classes we're looking at, like, who's in here if we're looking at freshmen? Flory Badunga, Bryson Tiller. All right. Like, so, and that's just a long way of saying it feels like Kansas kind of gotten away from their identity. 6 transfers they took, 5 the previous class. I don't know why Bill Self is kind of going away from the talent development. He's always been a guy that likes to play veterans, but you want to play your veterans, right? You don't want to play the other guy's veterans. So it's just a strange thing that's going on when I look at things from the outside of what's taking place in Kansas.
Yeah, and I think like one of the reasons this is confusing to us, and I think a lot of other people out there, is you can go back to really when they got the doors blown off them by Iowa State on like it was the middle of January, and then they won a game, and then they won another game, and then they lost a close. It was double overtime against Houston, and it was like okay, they're turning the corner, and then they come back and they beat Iowa State, and it's like okay, maybe Kansas has actually figured it out. Christian Brown telling them to worry more about the name on the front of their jersey than the one on the back, like that kind of stuff. Maybe it got home. And then they lose to Kansas State. Then they beat Colorado, and then they lose to Utah, and then they just lose by 34 freaking points to BYU. It feels like a team that's checked out, that's not interested. And on the Bill Self in the NIL era, this is maybe showing my ignorance here. But when we talk about college coaches, it just doesn't feel the same when we talk about Bill Self as far as carrying juice, some of these things, like as we do. Like with Coach K, he went forever without winning. Izzo's been forever without winning. And Roy Williams and all of these guys, it's household names. And then it's like, oh, and also Bill Self. And I'm wondering if, narrative has gotten away from him a little bit, getting into some of these recruiting things. You just ran through the numbers. This is a guy that is as accomplished as anybody in college basketball and should be pulling in these 5-star recruits left and right. They should be having to turn away the top 10 in the country because they're full up on recruits here at Kansas, and that's just not the way it's shaken out.
It's unbelievable. I'm going to run through his accomplishments here. He 2-time Division I champion. So he did the first in 2008, 2022. We just discussed. He's made the Final Four 4 times. 8 Big 12 tournament titles. 16 Big 12 regular season titles. It's unbelievable. Like, this is their conference. They dominate. There's nobody else besides Kansas in this one. Okay. 2-time AP College Coach of the Year. I mean, just a guy, you kind of run through everything. 5-time AP Big 12 Coach of the Year. The guy's an undoubted future Hall of Famer. And that we're sitting here, Tyson, the past 2 years, I don't think it's any shock to anyone that in the NIL era, when we talk about, all of a sudden the haves and the have-nots are getting way fewer, and you kind of it's kind of starting to come together, and that gap is closing. Well, now Utah can pay some guys. Oh, interesting. Oh, now the little brother Kansas State, they're starting to get some guys. They just paid $2 million for Coleman Hawkins. That was something that kind of shocked the world a little bit. Oh, now Houston's in the conference, and Houston's been really good. They got guys. They got a really good coach. And the playing field is level. And I think the Big 12 was a really good conference for a long time. And that's why it was impressive that Kansas was doing what they did. But this is the best it's been. I mean, you kind of infuse the talent of Arizona State, and some of these other guys that are coming from the Pac-12, and it's just a deeper conference with higher end talent. So I don't think that's a surprise there. I think where we look at going forward is, can Kansas get back to their identity of really hitting the recruiting trail hard? Because the transfer thing is fun and it's fine.
But and I think they're AJ Store.
Right. It's like Danny Hurley talked about it. It's like we get transfers to augment our roster. We don't get transfers to reshape our roster. Mm-hmm. And I think that Kansas is trying to reshape their roster to the transfer portal instead of using it to get guys that specifically boost who they currently have on campus.
Yeah, I mean, Store is a perfect example. I think if you could point at like what this Kansas season, this is a guy who averaged like 17 points a game for Wisconsin a year ago. He's the number 1 player in the portal. Everybody's lining up to get him, and he's getting clowned by Zeke Mayo. Like, it just doesn't. It's not even the same category these players are in, and I think that's a great point on just kind of. It's almost like they're. We go for the portal and then we'll fill out the rest, which does not seem to be the way forward here. And it's a new era of college sports. Everybody knows that. We've talked about it ad nauseum for a long time, but you got to find your footing, because if you don't, you're going to get passed. And as these conferences expand and competition gets tougher, because now there's 45 teams in your conference, and like you got to play Houston, you got to play some of these other guys you're not used to seeing in the middle of the regular season, Kansas has always, I think, had a pretty unique ability under Bill Self to be able to regroup and to be able to take some of these moments throughout the season. Like every single season for Kansas basketball, there's been some, they lose 2 games, and then that's fine. But there's been moments where it's like, that's the other shoe that just dropped. Oklahoma just passed them. Oklahoma State looks really good, whoever it is. And then they find a way to win the conference tournament. I don't think that's happening this year, and I don't think there's even a way that I can't see it at all with this team. They're just soft, and that's kind of the antithesis of some of these Kansas teams that have been really good.
Yeah, I mean, Tyson, they went 10-8 last year. It was the most conference losses that Big Self has ever had since coming to Kansas. They're 8-7 this year. I mean, they're at risk of having another historically bad season in the Big 12 under Bill Self. So I think it's kind of a danger zone here, and I don't want to be hyperbolic, and we don't try to be hyperbolic on this show, but let's look at things. And we just kind of ran through it. The recruiting's not as good. There's questions about like kind of what's happening on the court itself. We're looking at things from a schematic standpoint. NIL has made everything flatter across the country, right? With more money, more schools have been able to pay players, be able to get players in. And then the conference is better. Those 4 items, I'm looking at this and I'm like, are we going to look at Kansas as like an Indiana basketball?
Whoa.
Like, oh, remember what it I don't want to be now. Again, this is Bill Self. I don't know to be crazy here, but like, is that far out of the possibility, Tyson?
I think putting Indiana moniker on any of these guys right now is tough. I mean, like we're not talking about North Carolina sucking at the same time, and it hasn't been great over there this season. That's another blue blood. I don't think the Kansas is in danger of that Indiana tier and fall off, but like it's really hard to stay on the top when things are skewed for you to continue to stay on the top. And when things level out, how many really good college basketball coaches or guys we thought were really good college basketball coaches have been a little bit exposed over the course of the last 2 seasons as everything's kind of just gone like this. And, we've had some other teams rise up, and then you get these guys on ESPN going, well, we knew that this was a talented roster and a really good head coach this whole time. No, you didn't. Like, it's the facts of the situation are there are a million teams that are vying for one national championship. And some of these guys have been stuck at lower level programs, and now they're getting the opportunity that, I can spend the money that you sent Mario Chalmers in 2008. I get to do that now with my point guard. I think that they're in trouble, but they're not quite an Indiana level. I'm trying to think of like a smaller fall off, but all of them, like Louisville feels disrespectful to Kansas because their success is better. And so like it's kind of uncharted territory because you almost have to look at college football. It's like this feels like maybe they're going to go an LSU route and pop up every now and then, win a national championship, but mostly chill up towards 25.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was going to say maybe Kentucky after like the super early like freshman thing that Cal was doing. And it was like, oh yeah, they can peak a little bit, but it just never really was the same after that. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, again, I don't want to be hyperbolic, and I know you're trying not to be either. And you're I think pushing back a little bit harder off what I'm saying. And I tend to agree. I mean, we're talking freaking Bill Self. I mean, it's not like it's just here comes a guy out of nowhere type of coach, and we won a national championship. Like it's not, it's not some of the guys that we've seen at UConn, Kevin Ollie types. You know what I mean? Like, so we're talking about one of the greatest college coaches we've ever seen. But I do think there are warning signs at Kansas. Now they can go out, Tyson, and completely flip the narrative to come in and have another good recruiting class. They're trying to do that right now. I'm pulling up 2025, which is still being solidified. Well, they got the number 2 player in the country per 24/7. He's already signed Darren Peterson. He's from California, but they're still ranked 28th when it comes to the national rankings. Looking ahead to 2026, they got no recruits, no signs. It's still early when it comes to the basketball cycle on that front. But I mean, again, you get the number 2 guy in the country. That's great. Who else you got? I mean,
right.
So that's why I'm looking at things.
And I'm over the dude conversation with Kansas a little bit right now because, like, you look at the roster and it's Hunter Dickinson, it's KJ Adams, it's DeJuan Harris, Zeke Mayo, AJ Storr. We didn't even talk about Griffin. Like, there's guys that are just not showing up. Like, it's hot potato on which one of these guys. None of these dudes are consistent. The only one that's consistent is Hunter Dickinson. He's also the one that doesn't seem to play very well with others. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, we got some history with that. So, okay, Dyson, I mean, I guess it's a wait and see thing for us here for Kansas. I mean, we both have them in the danger zone, but we're not ready to call them dead, of course.
Over under Sweet 16 appearance.
Oh, under. I mean, good God, this team is horrible.
Me too. Well, I would maybe if I was Vegas, I might set the line at the round of 32.
I think so, and that's where they were kicked out last year, as we're kind of looking at things. That was a disappointing team. So they can win opening weekend, but we'll see where they get situated. We got a lot of college basketball left. That's what stay subscribed to us here. Smash that like button on the way out. Stay subscribed so don't miss a single thing. We got you covered heading into March Madness and all the other sports that are taking place. We'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.